All right, happy Friday, everybody. Today is September 12th, and you're hanging out with my community manager, the community built by, for, and managed by community managers. As always, you can chat along with us on our Twitter chat at hashtag CMGR Hangout, where I know some of you are watching right now. If you love what you're seeing today, have a great idea for a topic, or want to join us live some other day, hit us up at mycmgr.com. There's a button that says participate. You can click that, fill out a form. It's your ideas and it's your friends and network that really help us put on these shows every Friday. So if you work in community, you know that it's all about building and maintaining relationships. Relationships matter. They always have, even before the internet. And that's a little bit what we were talking about right before the show. So we're going to talk about maintaining relationships and what that entails, especially how it relates to community. It's kind of like Throwback Thursday to the 80s, where we didn't rely on technology to have relationships. But Sarah Nagel and Carrie Keenan over on Twitter, shout out to you guys. Thanks for helping us out over there. And with that, just jump right into introductions, starting with Tim.
All right. Well, I am Tim McDonald. I am the purveyor of purpose at Be the Change Revolutions, where I have the privilege and honor to work with the No Kid Hungry account, where we are putting an end to childhood hunger here in the U.S. And before that, I was the director of community at the Huffington Post.
Hey everyone, I'm Sherry Rohde. I co-produce CMGR Hangout here with Brew, as well as lead community and user experience at a company called Rebellion Media.
Hi, this is John Farrar. I'm the CEO of Nimble. Sometimes I feel like I'm the Don Quixote of relationship management. I've been saying the same things all my life, and funny thing is that all of a sudden relationships are going through a renaissance, and the more digital we get, the more human we need to be. So I'm happy to be here with you guys all today to talk about how to build and nurture relationships with your community.
Hey everybody, I am Dom Garrett, at Dom Garrett. I am the social media specialist for CET International. We are a international foreign exchange student program. I am stoked to be on my third community manager in a row. I'm working on becoming, if John's the Don Quixote, I'm working on becoming the Cal Ripken of the community manager hangouts. So super excited to be here and to chat with you guys today.
Hey everybody, my name is David Hurley. I'm the community manager for Joomla, open source content management system. I'm also the founder of an open source marketing automation platform called Mautic, and I'm super thrilled as well to be here and looking forward to talking about relationships in the community.
Awesome. I'm Brian Fanzo. iSocial Fans, jumping in here late as I had to join at the last minute, but I'm a chief digital strategist at Broadsuite. Big fan, of course, of CMGR Hangout, and pretty much all of my favorite people are on as panelists today. So I couldn't be more honored to join with all of these smiling faces.
Awesome, and hey everybody, I'm Brew, Director of Awesome at Be the Change Revolutions, and also co-producer here with Sherry for my community manager. So let's just kick things right off. Obviously, if you have relationships, the more you grow, the more people you have, and part of relationships is just keeping touch with people, keeping in contact. So for question number one, how do you decide how often to keep in touch with a community member? Tim, you want to take this? You're smiling. You got a big smile.
I am smiling because I always kind of chuckle when I get asked this question, because I don't have like this prescription of like I contact this person once a week, this person once a month, this person once a quarter. I think it's more organic for me. It's really knowing when people have a lot of activities going on, when they need your attention, and when they're not asking for your attention, that you need to pull them back into the fold. And so it just really, I think, understanding each individual person and what their needs and wants are and how you can best effectively work with them in that context. And that's kind of how I determine how frequently I stay in touch with people.
I agree, Tim. There's a natural rhythm to relationships, and that ultimately you need to be sensitive to who the person is and what their needs are. And I think that what people forget about relationships is that in many cases they don't nurture them, and they reach out when they need something. And that's the worst thing you can do in a relationship, because ultimately, to build relationships, it really is about paying it forward and helping others. I believe that in order to build anything, you need to serve others. The more people you serve, the more you will grow. And so really understanding the people around you and understanding when to reach out. And I'm just going to tell a quick story. I have high school friends that I haven't spoken to or seen in 5 years that I know if I reached out or if they reached out, it'd be like we knew each other and we saw each other 5 minutes ago. And these are the type of relationships that really make or break a human being, because ultimately I believe we're on this planet to grow our souls and help other people grow theirs. And you do that by being present with other human beings, by listening to their passions and sharing those. And through that vibration, that's how we all grow, and that's all we leave this universe with.
Couldn't agree with you more there. And I love friendships like that, when you have those types of things, especially if you can have that in the community, where even if you don't talk or see them face to face, it's like riding a bike. You don't really miss anything if you can pick it right back up. And I agree with you completely, Tim, about how it is very organic. It is a rhythm, but at the same time, I think that another good tip to do is that if you know that you should be following up with somebody, especially with so many members in communities, making little notes of, I have to make sure I respond to this person for their specific project or what they're working on, just making a little quick thing, even if they don't ask you to, really does go a long way in that too. Using different applications to say, I need to make sure I get back in touch with this person, or send somebody this in a week to make sure I keep notes in my phone to make sure that I do that, and it really helps deepen those relationships.
Yeah, this is the part where I always say this is where I use technology and automation in relationships. So I hate the term busy, but we all have lots of things going on. So I use calendar notifications more than probably most people. But for me, it's all about, like, I have a notification that went off every Wednesday when I was working at my last company. It said, walk to the 3rd floor and talk to marketing, because I would always forget to talk to marketing. And if I didn't have that notification on there, it was one of those things that, I'm too busy. But because I blocked off that half hour of time, and I hate to say that it sounds like it's a forced relationship, but for me it was a forced reminder that, hey, this is something I care about, I want to go reach out. And so I do that on Twitter as well. I know John's on the call, and with Nimble, one of the things that I always loved about that, it gave you your last correspondence, and you could categorize when or how important this person was, and it would tell you, hey, you haven't talked to them in a month, and you said this person is someone you want to talk to every 2 weeks. So like that kind of automation and technology is what I use, and it's the reason I'm able to keep up with as many awesome people as I am.
I think what I see is it really comes down to being aware as a community manager. You have to have a sense of awareness for where people are at, because just as was mentioned earlier, there is a natural rhythm to it, and sometimes you go 2 weeks without talking to somebody and it's no big deal. You pick up right where you left off, and other people feel like you're neglecting them if you haven't talked to them every couple of days. So it's being aware of your community and the different types of people that are in it, and being able to connect directly with them in what's most comfortable for them.
Yeah, I think the danger with the danger with not having at least somewhat of a little system as your community grows is you just don't want people to slip through the cracks, and where people feel like, oh man, I used to be like a BFF with the community manager, or or whatever, right? Like all of a sudden, you've lost that loving feeling, so.
And that's really actually pretty hard in a global community the scale of like what we're involved with Joomla, because there really are millions of people, and in trying to keep up with that many people is really impossible if you don't have some sort of system or some way of being able to diversify that leadership amongst different groups of people.
And one of the things I want to point out is I believe in the old days we thought that we could basically hire a community manager and give them Hootsuite and basically engage a community, and that was enough. In reality today, in order to participate in the new customer buyer journey, you need to empower all of your team members to be able to build their brand, grow their network, listen and engage with the community across all the areas of your company. And so I think that in order to effectively build and nurture a community today, you need to empower the emerging social employee to engage with the new social customer. And it's not even about the customer, because it takes a community to build a company. So forget about prospects and customers. It's about constituency, because ultimately it's analysts, editors, bloggers, influencers, third-party developers, technology partners, friends and family, and you need to be connecting to all of them on a regular basis and nurturing these relationships over time in order to stay top of mind. Because Mae West said, out of sight is out of mind, and out of mind is out of money, honey.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of good points for sure, and that's one thing, which is exactly what happens with me, is I get busy and then I forget about this person over here who isn't like as noisy, let's say, as someone over here. And it's not that they don't want attention too, it's just that they just have a different way of going about it. So it's really important for me to figure out, all right, these are people that I need to stay in touch with weekly, these are people I need to stay in touch with monthly, these ones don't really like that much attention, so let's just check in like quarterly type of thing.
So I know, Brian, you had mentioned you use calendar reminders to keep track of how, when to catch up with somebody. What else do you guys, for everybody else on the panel, do you have a little tip or trick? Are you using technology? Are you writing things down?
So this sounds like a softball flying over the plate, so I'm going to smack this one. So ultimately, I don't think that you can track relationships effectively in today's world. Our networks have exploded. Your contacts aren't in Outlook anymore, and they're not in your CRM. They're in Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Instagram, Foursquare, and Google+. And the networks are exploding, and the conversations are exploding across all those channels. So a conversation might start on Twitter, move over to Facebook, shift over to email, and ultimately, how do you manage and track these things, and how do you know when you last spoke to somebody? So this is why I got back in the technology business, in order to build a platform that automatically builds a record for you and links the conversations from any place to anyone, from anybody on your team to anybody you're touching, and then it'll update the last time you spoke to them, and you can set a touch cycle to stay in touch. So if you basically say, I want to connect with Tim every 30 days or every 90 days, Nimble will basically say, you know what, you haven't touched him, or if you did, it'll basically just update the last time. And then if you do want to touch him, rather than sending Tim an email and saying, hey, did you look at my demo or my proposal, you should walk in the digital footprint and add value to the conversation. And that way it's a warm call rather than a cold call, and they know that you're paying attention to them and helping them. And I think we need tools like this today. But I think the biggest thing is that you can't go to a CRM or a contact manager to manage these things, because you want to be able to bring that network and that technology with you everywhere you go. And with Nimble Everywhere, Nimble plugs into email, plugs into your browser. So anytime you're looking at any name, in fact, I'm here in Google+, I can right-click Sherry's name, and basically I can get that Nimble record and walk in her footprint and get to know her and know when we last spoke. And that's what we all need, is basically a second brain on our shoulder that's like our nudge that says, hey, John, you haven't connected with Tim in a while. Reach out and say hey.
And I think that's, to me, there's so much gold there. And I'll kind of take this to the idea where, for me, community, especially with social, changed drastically, and two of the people that really helped me with that change are actually on this panel. So, it's I'm honored that, John and Tim are here, because what that kind of, the idea of community for me and social was always blasting messages, right? I'm on social because I have global, I can talk to the global world, but kind of what John's talking about right now and what Tim is always ingrained on, the idea of one-to-one conversations that together make up this community, and all those elements of like notifications, reminders, tools, these are one-to-one. This is, hey, you're not saying, hey, reach out to the hashtag social biz. You're saying reach out to this person. That's the difference. My use of Twitter changed when I thought of it as a one-to-one conversation that can have a party, versus a, hey, I'm just going to keep blasting messages out there and try to talk to the world. And I think that, using tools like Nimble, making sure that you have reminders. I love Evernote. I also always use the hashtag screenshot awesomeness, because if someone is continually saying thank you, Brian, and doing more than a Follow Friday. Follow Friday is an automated pollution of Twitter for now, right? But there's people that are going out of their way to like make nice call outs. I screenshot them, and then when I'm reviewing them, I'll actually add them to a list of people that I'm going to make sure I'm going to seek out their content and promote them. Not because they asked for it, but because I feel like it's a solid back. It's that one-to-one solid. So, I mean, I think that's the gem. When brands and leaders take social from a one-to-many conversation to a one-to-one, that's when we really make a difference.
Well, Brian, you're absolutely right. I think human beings naturally want to be heard. They naturally want to connect. That's why we love social. So when you basically look at the little red lights on Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter, what that is like the AT&T phone that used to be on your kitchen table with the blinking red light. I knew on a Friday afternoon if that light wasn't blinking and the number wasn't greater than 3, I was going to be in trouble that weekend. That was my teenage years. And today, we all basically go like this all the time looking for red lights that people are basically seeing and hearing us. And so ultimately, if you could actually connect one-to-one, turn on your camera, go meet somebody in person and connect with that person and give them goosebumps. Connect the vibration between that person and make them see and feel you. That's what we're on this planet to do, is touch people authentically and relevantly.
I agree with you completely. And like what Brian was saying, that taking it from when brands and people do that and you take it from one-to-many to one-to-one, one thing that I love is something that Gary Vaynerchuk said, and if anybody's out there playing the when is Dom gonna mention Gary Vaynerchuk drinking game, go ahead and tip him back. But if you look at a brand or you look at a specific person, I always, instead of just looking at tweets, I do tweets and replies, and I want to see how many people that they are actually replying to. If I notice that they put out 10 tweets in the past hour and all of them are just blasting out stuff so that, come and look at my stuff, I don't really care about that. I could look at the side of Facebook and see as many ads as I want to. But if I notice that they're talking to people and responding, that's what I see as good community. And whether using a tool like Nimble, whether they're using pencil and paper, I scribble names on my whiteboard, which, sorry guys, my whiteboard's not here with me today. Things like that. Whatever way it is that you use it, it's important that you're talking to other people instead of just, being a glorified megaphone.
Well, I think, for me, not to say I don't do what almost everybody else said, but, there's 2 other things I think that I really look for. And one, to Brian's point, it's like I know a lot of the people in my community and my network are people that are producing content and want their content shared. And the best way for me to help is I either have them set up on RSS feeds, I have columns set up, I do searches for what they're sharing, so even if they're not asking me, I'm becoming aware of their content, and I'm sharing that content without them having to ask me. So I'm doing something that I know is going to benefit them without them having to ask me, which they always notice when you do that. So that's like, I'm not doing it for that purpose, but I'm doing it to help them, and in return they're paying attention to the fact that we're doing it. The other thing I think that's really been beneficial is using a service like Newsel, which gives you alerts for people in your social contacts. I cannot tell you how many times there's been an article written about a person. These usually aren't the blog posts that they've written, but if they've been written up in a traditional magazine or published somewhere, those alerts come up, and I get to actually notify that person that they're in there before they even knew that they showed up in there. So I'm giving them an alert that they showed up. The other thing that I really like is for my RSS feeds that I get, if I'm reading an article that I find somebody in my community is really going to find interesting, instead of just blasting that out on Twitter, I actually send an email to that person and tell them why I think that article would be of interest to them. And I can't tell you how many times that spurs a new conversation with somebody.
Wow. That's huge right there. That's huge.
Lots of nuggets there.
That's so true, because really it's the personal contact, and just because you shared something socially in a setting where, yes, it's one-to-one, but everyone's watching, there's something to be said for when you take that offline, right, and you make that one-to-one connection with them as well.
It's something that taking it and trying to get face-to-face, like what we were talking about before we went live with John and Tim, and talking about the idea that social, and people are talking, and John was saying, it's like, this isn't new. Like, it's new tools to do it, but it's not new. And it reminded me of this phrase, somebody did a video series, it's called Everything is Remixed, and it's the idea that there is nothing new that we're going through here. Like all of these interactions, it's just a different tool to do the same types of interactions. So if you find an article and you're like, hey, I think you would like this, or if you notice somebody's Twitter bio that they just put out there a little bit, it's like, man, that's something cool. Just like noticing the pictures of the trophies on somebody's desk, you're taking it to that. Yep, there you go. John's got it going on.
Well, the thing is I love all these social selling experts that are popping up in the woodwork everywhere you go. So all of a sudden, everybody is spewing out that social is new for sales. Well, guess what? Business has always been social. People buy from people they like, and they like people who know them. You can't know somebody without looking at their walls. In the old days, we used to go in somebody's office and look at the books they read, the degree of the school they went to, the knickknacks they collect. Why? To share what we have in common, to develop the intimacy and trust necessary for them to open up to you about their businesses, what's as a professional, you can then solve. Today, we're doing that more and more electronically, but the problem is that the more digital we get, the more human we need to be, and we got to stop spew all the time to people and actually start connecting in a human-to-human way, because it's not B2B or B2C, it's P2P and H to H, human to human.
And I think, John, I think that's the whole point now, is this social selling aspect. I mean, like, people bought someone the favorite bottle of whiskey because they cared enough to know what that bottle of whiskey was, right? And now, I mean, I think now there is no excuse. We talk about the buyer having the power, the buyer being, the connected consumer. Well, now they've given us all this data, the social data, that there is no excuse for not knowing feedback, not understanding someone. If you're going to call and you haven't done a little bit of research, or you haven't used a tool that already gives you all that research, I don't feel like you valued the time with me to begin with, because all of that data, it's human data. All of that human data is out there for us to make those human connections. I couldn't agree more.
So I'm going to bring in, just kind of back to our core question. Liz Schmidt says, I'm honest and tell my community, if I don't get back to you in a couple days, ping me again. I'm not perfect and it's okay. I thought that was pretty interesting too, because one of the things, especially David, you said with a community of millions, it's sometimes like you have to be like, no, you tweet first. No, you tweet first, right? You kind of almost have to wait for people to want to come in and refire those relationships, right?
And that tweet is dead on. I mean, when you deal with so many people, it's not that you mean to neglect anyone, but it's just natural. It's going to happen. And if you're upfront about it and not try to hide the fact that, hey, you know what, I'm going to make mistakes, I'm going to screw up, but just reach out to me again and give me that chance to connect with you. I think that's an awesome tweet. That's right on target.
And I think what that is it's actually a reminder to all of us that if you send somebody an email, you can't expect that they see it today, right? And that in some cases you shouldn't send anybody an email because they won't see it, because our inboxes are so full. And sometimes I find that I can connect more effectively with other business people through Facebook messages than I can through an email, through a Twitter direct message. So ultimately, I think that if somebody doesn't follow up with you, don't take it negatively. Just follow back up with them and say, circling back, hey, just want to make sure you see this, or try another channel.
That goes right back to being aware, right? Because you need to be aware of what their communication channel is, right? Because it might not be email for everyone or Twitter for everyone. So you need to be aware of where they're most comfortable talking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's really getting to know the other person too. I mean, if you're paying attention, you might hit them once within an email, but if you're paying attention and they can see that you're putting forth the effort and not making it any more difficult for them to stay in contact, then they're more likely to want to continue to stay in contact with you.
What I do before I contact somebody is I walk in their digital footprint and I look at the channels they talk on, what they talk about, and then I reach out to them on the channel that's most effective for them, on the topic that makes sense, and that way it's relevant, it's authentic, and you're connecting on the channel that's comfortable for them.
John, when you said that, when I first started using social tools, I was in real estate. And I was in an office that had many traditional real estate agents in there, and they would always tell me, I only want my clients contacting me on this number. I only want them sending me emails at this time. And I'm like, you guys don't understand the world that we live in today. It's not about what you want. It's about understanding what your clients are receptive to. I had one guy who responded to me quicker on DM Twitter DM than any other method. I had another one that I had to pick up the phone and call. I had another one that was email was always the best way. It's understanding, and this is the power that I think we as community managers understand already, and more business people, as they become using more and more social tools, are going to understand, is just understanding how you can best effectively communicate with the people where and when they want to be communicated with.
I actually have several friends who now have Twitter because they learned that was the fastest way to get a hold of me. That's a true story.
That's what you need to do. Just force. Don't say a word to anybody on any other platform. Force them all to your.
They're like, I texted you like 4 hours ago. I was like, oh, I don't know. I didn't look at my phone.
And I think that's the power of, like, you know, when we talk about social listening, but it's really the social listening and tracking. I mean, like, understanding where you should promote somebody and where you can engage with somebody, or where you can have like that one-to-one conversation. Those might be different channels. Like, I mean, I can't tell you, like, the amount of business and conversations that I have on Facebook Messenger is insane. And so when people were talking about they were just going to get rid of Facebook Messenger and having that whole debate, for me, Facebook Messenger is my one-to-one link on with so many amazing people that it's like, dude, there's so much value there. I could never get rid of that. And they're like, well, why wouldn't you just go to text them, or why wouldn't you? And I was like, well, in my contacts, I have where I mean, this goes back to, you know, John and Nimble, where I want to know where I last engaged with a person, not only because I want to know the history so I don't ask them the same question that I just asked them a week ago, you know, and look like the fool that doesn't really care, but also I want to know where they're going to listen, because if I'm going to spend the time to reach out, I want to make it the easiest for you, the person that I'm asking a favor for.
And you know, Brian, that actually brings up a thing that I've been working on for the past 6 months, is tying communications and signals to people. I think is critical to understanding the depth and the frequency of the relationship. So if you think about it, how many times have you had somebody where you're connecting with them and you're communicating with them on a regular basis, and you've got this oscillation up here, and then all of a sudden it just starts going quieter and quieter, and then it just goes dead, right? And so that is the time when you need to reach out. So it's not necessarily setting a time of a cycle that I want to touch Tim every 3 months, but if you could understand the cycle of the communication, if it's automatically tracked, and then the system basically says that this person who was close to you is slipping away and you should reach out and basically connect and pay that relationship forward, that would be magical. What do you think, Brian?
I couldn't agree more. I think it's that whole, you know, and this is the element where you're taking it to the next level. This is the human data where I think, like Dom, if you're going to drink every time, I use the hashtag show you care, because it's just, you know, unique ways to show you care. And the more ways you can show you care, the more that the value of that relationship. And I went off on this soapbox yesterday on an interview call that I was doing, and I talked about, like, for me, I don't think of social as any tool or any network. It's how I am engaging and having these conversations, but it's online and offline. Like, so I mean, that conversation of, you know, if someone's great at selling offline, I can teach you the tools to be great online, but you have to want to use it. You have to spend the time, just like you spend the time playing golf on a foursome and learning their other aspects of their life. If you don't do that, if you don't, you know, and I even come to the point where, for me, when someone knows how much I care about being a dad, like, that to me knows they listen on other channels and see that aspect, I will give them more time. Because if you can simply say, hey, Brian, I saw you had a great weekend with your kids. Would you check out this article? I will check out that article way more than someone saying, hey, Brian, check out my article. Like,
and this is why I think when people talk about social selling and they talk about LinkedIn, they're missing the boat. Because ultimately, LinkedIn is basically the resume I want you to see of my business side of me. But ultimately, if you really want to connect to me in an authentic and relevant way, you need to see who I really am. Walk in my footprint, look at my Instagram. A picture tells 1,000 words, and you should be mixing a variety of channels into the tools that you use to understand other human beings and how best to connect with them and build relationships. So you want to know John Ferrara? Follow me on Instagram. Check out my walls. This is where my passions are. You go read my LinkedIn thing, you'll see that basically I'm putting balls out with relationships and CRM, but who cares? Connect to me on a human level, and then we'll get to the business.
I love that, and I always make a joke, like when I'm hanging out with somebody and I'm talking with them, and normally it starts on Twitter because I spend 99% of my day with that there. But then, you know, when it moves and somebody adds me on Facebook, Or then I get, like a LinkedIn and somebody's following. It's like just getting the trifecta, getting the triple crown of social media when you're getting to know somebody. And I think of my friend Emma Cunningham, who I met first off on a community manager panel, and then we started talking more. And then I'm following her on Instagram, and that's all about baby wear stuff. And then I'm following her on Facebook, and that's literally nothing but her kids. And I know her as a person, and that relationship is deep. And when you can get that with other community members and with clients, and you really feel like you know the person, then it's as easy as having a conversation with somebody and going, hey, here's this. And then it's nothing but an actual interaction with a human being. Nobody feels like they're being sold. It's just saying, hey, check this out. Hey, check this out. And then, it grows from there. It turns into a great, word of mouth marketing when somebody's like, yeah, this person actually cares and they know who I am, so they know that this would work. If you have something you're just trying to hawk it and it's, a piece of shit, then who cares? You're not going to do well. But if you're actually connecting with people, then that's what matters.
Dom, I'm like almost laughing as you say that, because in almost a sad way, because to imagine the fact that we need to qualify that conversations have to be human is a pretty sad statement of where we've come, because that has always been what business has been about. It's been about people. It's never been about anything else. And so to think that we actually need to qualify that this is how you do it is almost mind-boggling to me.
Well, I have a story to tell on that. I believe that the past 100 years, we went through a cycle, and we're going back to small towns. So social is turning the world into a small town. So what happened was we basically built manufacturing in the late 1800s, and we made so much stuff that we had to basically start marketing and putting door-to-door salespeople to go sell the stuff. So basically we went from one-to-one relationships where people would walk in the store, they not only knew you, but they knew what you wanted and had it on the top of the counter ready for you, to the point where people are pounding on your door, yelling at you about how great their products and services were. And basically, we're now shifting back to where social is making everything a small town, where basically people know who other people are, and people take the time to serve other people in a one-to-one relationship way.
Yeah.
Well, just like communities started to come together over bad things that happen in the town, look what's happening now in social as well, right? Somebody loses a house, somebody has a bad illness, anyone's down on their luck, and all of a sudden, people from around the world are coming together to help those people out, which is kind of cool.
And even if you look at, I think of like the things that are trusted least and people have no faith in are government and banks. And government and banks don't have, they don't talk as a brand on any social networks. They don't feel very small town. They feel big and secretive. And you could have a giant company, but if you're a giant company and you know how to talk to people and you're out there, or even if you do make a mistake and you get out in front of it and you're like, hey, you know what, we're people too. We mess up, but here's how we're handling it, and everybody gets to see it. People have more grace for something like that. Just like in a small town, you could be a business owner and have something horrible happen, but if you get out in front of it and you're like, hey guys, I'm really sorry about this, it's the same thing. It's if you're out there and you're actual real and authentic, and if you're playing the buzzword drinking game, there you go, authenticity.
Well, I think that's we talk about social listening, and we'll talk about it, but I use social listening not only for my brand and I use my social listening for the people I care about, to like to take a full circle with Tim and Newsel. The reason that I use a lot of these tools, the reason I use Mention, I'm not using them most of the time. I want to know when other people are doing great things so I can help promote them, so I can help, and that's where, I'm not going to answer an ROI question with that, but I want to make sure people know that I want to use tools and automation. I think where this whole problem came, I love that quote, John, where social's turning the world into a small town. And for me, that the reason that I left, I loved the title that I had was technology evangelist. And someone would ask me what I did every day, and I was like, I would teach them how to change their people and their processes. And they would go, well, that's not technology. And I'm like, well, because technology and automation either have a bad term or people have been using them incorrectly. I use automation every single day in everything I do, because that's the only way I can scale what I'm doing. But I don't use that in engagement. I don't use that in the conversations I have, but it organizes, pools my data, pools my information. So unfortunately, when someone tells me, oh, you're a technology evangelist, I hate social technology, it's all crap. And I'm like, well, it's because you're not using, you think of social, your philosophy of social is broken, not the tool. And I think that's where we have to re-educate the network. It's these tools that we're automating and spamming, and I mean, there's a difference between an automated engagement and automation in social.
So I'm going to bust in here. We got our first question from our friends over on Twitter. Carmela asks, when a relationship goes sour with an individual in the community, how do you determine if it's worth repairing?
My thought on this is that you always try to repair it. That's what I do. That's what I do with friends in my real life. If anything goes sour, you always try to. What you have to realize is that sometimes there are people that don't want it to be repaired. And that's when I think you sort of cut ties and you realize there's nothing that you can do. But you always try to. I mean, if you make a mistake, own up to it, you know? Like say, hey, sorry, and try to do it. But you have to try. And if the other person's not willing, then they're not willing. There's nothing much you can do after that other than don't repeat the same mistake again. But always try.
I agree. I think that you need to make your best effort. I think that in many cases, you think about any relationship you have throughout your life, that a hard heart is really going to make you ill and it's not going to be healthy, that you soften your heart at any time you can with another human being, with a customer, with a vendor, with a team member, and you basically own up to stuff and you basically say, hey, this is my thing and I did this and let's move on. And if yes, and they come back and connect, that's great. If they don't, then you know what? You're not hanging on to that thing that'll just make you worse.
Well, and I think part of this goes into, and I'll kind of play a little bit of devil's advocate, maybe ask a question on top of this that Camelia asked. For me, I'm running into an issue where I talked about scale and using technology and using what I use to engage, build relationships, show I care. There comes a point where how much giving are you giving to someone where there is no value. Not only, I'm not asking for the get. I don't need a dollar value. I mean a value that I'm actually helping, because the amount of times that I feel that either someone's wasting my time or the time or taking advantage of people, I am guilty as in always trusting and always doing whatever I can to a fault multiple times, because I'm like Dom said, I don't want to let someone fall off the edge. But at some point you have to scale. I was having this conversation with Jay Bear a couple weeks ago and asked him, like, as you're building a company, and as many of you on the panel have as well, how do you handle and prioritize what directly comes to you and you see as a notification on your phone and it interrupts you versus what gets pushed into an email box or into something that you engage with later? Because you have to prioritize, and I suck at prioritizing. I will put that out there 100%.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about, Brian, doesn't have anything to do with scaling. It doesn't have anything to do with business. It can be personal. It's all about the impact, right? It's the impact that relationship has on you and can have on you in the future. And once you can identify what that impact is, whether that's dollars, whether that's negative publicity, whether that's, actual physical pain to you, then you can start to look and say, how important is this moving forward? The first step should always be to repair it, but then you need to start looking. And as I've grown my network, as I've grown and been involved in bigger communities, as I've, looked in my personal life and the people that I stay in touch with, it's not a matter that I've scaled. Certainly I have, but that's not what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the impact that the people I have relationships with, what that means to me, and the community and the business that I'm involved with.
All right, I'm going to jump us into this third question here. And actually, I'm going to pull up Liz Schmidt again. She said, because this is her first answer. So the question is, how do you take notes to keep track of important details about someone in your community? And earlier on, Liz, when we were talking about how do you remember when to connect, Liz had said she uses Evernote to keep track of the community relationships and then set reminders and track conversation notes. So what are some of the other ways you guys are keeping track of those important details?
Another softball for you, John.
I feel bad doing this. You know, the thing is I'm a little dyslexic. I have trouble with remembering to do all the things I need to do. And when I was 29 years old, I was handed leads on a sheet of paper called computer intelligence reports. I had to cold call these people and make notes on those things, make notes in my leather-based date timer before I went to a meeting and then after the meeting, and then keep my forecast on a spreadsheet, and I communicate with pink while you're out slips, and it wasn't working for me, so I built this thing called Goldmine that predates Outlook and CRM and SFA as terms that help business people connect to people that matter, to turn connections into conversations and relationships into mutually beneficial business outcomes. Today, I built Nimble again because ultimately I believe that you can't go to your contact manager, you can't go to your CRM to manage relationships. You need to take it with you everywhere you go. And so basically, Nimble is embedded in all my apps and all my places. And whenever I talk to somebody, I could bring them up and get the background, the digital D411, and then tag them, make notes. And Nimble's my second brain. I was going to call it Nudge before I called it Nimble. And I just think that most people don't know what a nudge is. But a nudge is something on your shoulder that just reminds you. Because basically, we're human. We forget. And you need to basically log notes, schedule tasks, tag people in order to have to follow up and remember these things. And so so I use Nimble everywhere I work.
And I think one of the important things there, and this is what Nimble does great, is no matter what tool you're using. So I use Evernote. There's a tool called Quip that I use for collaborating in documents. I love Google Docs. The key is you have to have the data and this information available to you when you need it. And I will caveat that with is you don't know when you're going to need it. So I have a pen and paper, and surprisingly enough, most people are surprised that I have one of those. I take my notes from here every day and put it online into a box folder, into a Google Doc, and everyone's like, that's kind of reverse. For me, if I'm out, if I'm on my phone, I mean, I always think mobile first for everything, but if I'm laying in bed and someone asks me for a link or asks me for a quote or something, for me it's about having that at my disposal. And part of what our problem is when we think of these notes or these lists, or people say, man, Brian, how do you multitask? I multitask by I keep track and record a lot of stuff so that I can always access it. Every single picture that I've ever shared on social media, on Twitter, is stored in a Box account that I have automatically set up using if this then that. Because you know what? If I have to call a picture or use something, that's how I do it. I go in and I go and pull that. The same goes for like Evernote. Like I have notes from CMGR Hangouts that will actually I can pull that up because I actually can show you the people that are in the Hangout and some of my favorite quotes that I had from each of the Hangouts that I've been joined. Because if someone's going to reach to me and ask me that, I want to be able to prove the value of like you have to watch CMGR Hangout because, and I want to have that data available to me everywhere. So no matter what your tool is, not every tool fits everyone as much as John will say, Nimble is a great tool that lots of people need to really look at, because I didn't look at Nimble because I thought of it as a CRM, and my experience at CRM when I was not in sales is someone told me, go pound sand, you're not getting access to our CRM data, you're not in sales, you don't have a quota. Well, so then I reached out, and through reaching out, I actually found Nimble, and I was like, wow, this tool is not CRM. This is an organization of my one-to-one people. This is a people organizer, not a data collector, CRM, sales cycle, spam email list. And so that's my rant. I love that we have to focus on a tool that fits into your workflow that can be available to you anywhere.
So if I could just, I don't know if you guys can see my shared screen, but I just wanted to sort of show you a little bit about how I do it. So can you guys see my screen okay? Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, as much as I'd love people to just live in inside the Nimble platform, they spend about 2 hours a day in the platform, but I think they're spending time in other places. So basically, today, Ian was shouting me out, and ultimately, I'd like to know, the last time Ian and I spoke, and so basically, with Nimble, I can go ahead and see that history. I could schedule the tasks that need to be done, log the notes I need to do. And here I see that he's updated his bio and his location. And so basically, Nimble's enabled me to do that really anywhere as I work. So basically here, this guy's sharing something I want to share, and I want to basically remember to follow up with him on something. Basically, anywhere as I am, you can have that. And ultimately, I think a tool is only as good as when you use it. So I'm going to share another story with you. I have some massively amazing cameras, and I don't use them. I use the one that's with me all the time. And so basically, it's only as good as if it's there with you to be able to do the things you need to do and see the things you need. And that's why I think that the right tool in the right place is absolutely critical.
But,
Yeah.
but I mean, what you said there, you said you had to take notes, you have to add comments, you have to add tags. When I try to get people to use a technology like that, if the reason it fails is not the technology, it's your amount of effort that you put into it. If you really want to do, I mean, what you just showed there, John, is the essential element that you care enough that you want to follow up with somebody. But when someone throws that tool out there and then they go, this has no value to me, I never find it any useful, it's because you didn't put the time and effort into the tool into the relationship. So I put the effort into the tools, and the output for me is increased productivity, and it saves the one thing I can't buy more of. That's time. So I mean, you have to spend the time on the tool, or it's going to have no value.
And I think that goes back to it's the basics that wins games. It's the basic follow-up and follow-through. Because you need to be top of mind when they're making a buying decision that they think of you. And if you don't do the basic follow-up and follow-through, how many times has somebody sent you an email, introed you to somebody else, and you basically replied, thanks for the intro, I'd love to connect, and they never followed up? Or they followed up and sent you, yeah, here's the time, and you didn't follow up with that invite. I mean, basically, it is hard work to do the basics, but if you do the basics, you win games.
Yeah, got to get back to the basics. I mean, it's that idea. It's like, I mean, if you ask somebody, what tool should I use? What should I do for this? It's a quote that I heard once, and I forget where it was, but somebody asked, like, hey, do you think this tool would be good for this platform? And it's like, that's like asking, hey, can this screwdriver screw in that screw? It's like, yeah, if you take the time to learn how to use it. And, you take the time to know what the basics are, you learn how to use it, and, whether it's nimble or, I have, let me see here, productivity. I've got, a bunch of different apps there that I use every single day, whether it's pen and paper, it'll work if you know how to use it. So that's what you have to spend your time doing.
All
right, guys.
Go
ahead.
I was just going to say, just because it's a really good example, we use Basecamp at Be the Change, and one of the things that every community manager does during their shift is take screenshots of moments when things happen. What that does for us, though, is exactly kind of what Brian especially was saying, is when you need that information, it's right there, but it also helps down the road, later on that month, later on that year, or next year when you're doing that same activation, who were those people? And you already have that deck that you provided to the client in a visual format that you can relate to. So,
cool, that's a good point. All right, well, I'm going to move us, in the interest of time, into our fourth question, which is, what do you do when an active community member is just not that into you?
That's awesome. So I'll speak first on that, I guess. With a community as large as what Joomla is, there's a very good chance that there's going to be people that don't like me, or just we don't relate on the same level. But that doesn't mean they shouldn't be involved in the community. So it comes down to understanding what they do relate to and who they relate with, and having those people connect with them. It's taking yourself out of the equation, keeping them involved in the community through another source. So maybe you recognize that, hey, they communicate really well with this person over here, and I can talk with this person really effectively, so I'm just going to let them know, hey, here's some ways in which I think they'd be super useful. Why don't you see if they'd be interested? And then they can go to that person and get them more involved. Find ways to make a connection, even if that's not a direct connection.
I absolutely love that. That is like one of my biggest things that I always do. It's like look for the other people, help encourage them to make the connection so that you don't have to be the center of it. You're just the facilitator and the conduit of it. But I think the other thing that really works for me when somebody's not that into you is you just go above and beyond and surprise the living heck out of them with something that doesn't cost you money. It doesn't have to be anything that's labor intensive. It can be picking up the phone and calling them. It can be sending them a handwritten card. But you do little things like that. I mean, even Starbucks has the tweet a coffee now. I mean, imagine the impact that it has when you just tweet somebody a $5 Starbucks gift card now. I mean, those are all little things that you can do when somebody's not that into you that all of a sudden they're going to pay attention to you. I love actually just if I see somebody mentioning a book that I either like or that I want to get a relationship with, I'll go on Amazon and I'll shoot them a Kindle version of that book that they were talking about, even though they never talked to me about it. It's just I saw them talking about it, and I'll just gift them the Kindle version of the book.
And one of the things that I think that's like spot on, because I think I also like to study who they like, because I deal with influencers, I'm dealing with that right now. Who influences the influencer, or who influences the person that doesn't like you? Because I want to study and know, like, okay, if this is the kind of person that likes them, or these are the things that they like. Not saying that I will change to do that, but it helps me understand better what they're looking for, what value. And it doesn't mean that I will have to provide that value. I think of it much like a coach. Like, I coach a hockey team, and if I can't get a defenseman to listen to me, but every time I see him watching the star defenseman on our team, I grab the star defenseman on the team and say, I want you to take him aside, help him out. He cares. He looks up to you. It doesn't provide me a better relationship with a person, but it provides value for the team overall and the community as a whole.
I think that this also goes back to the thing that we were talking about earlier, is that there shouldn't be just one point person in your company that deals with the community, that it really takes a village, takes an entire team of people from your company connecting with your constituency in order for you to build your social business. So empower your social team members to build their brands and connect with your constituency in order to grow. And ultimately, if you have the right mix of people, you will have a person that they can connect to in a more effective way.
Yeah, and one of the things that I always think of, and this is a big life thing, I might get a tad bit meta here, but it's the idea of one of my personal life philosophies is, if I'm looking at anybody in this panel, anybody in the Twitter chat, anybody in the world, we have the thing in common that we're on the planet and we're living. Doesn't matter what our big cup, small cup issues are. I think I've mentioned that before on here, but it's that idea that we are all people. So then what I do is I start there and I go, okay, where can I build from there? This person and I aren't obviously getting along on this, but what can I do to get the most amount of common denominators between the two of us so that we can say, hey, you're in my community, I'm in this community, we're on the same team. So what can we focus on to move forward from that point? Let's not necessarily worry about the differences, but try to find where we're similar, and then we can start moving forward.
Finding common ground.
That comes down to the definition of why you're in the community together. What are you there for? Why are you passionate about what you're passionate about? And that's your common ground. Exactly. That's it.
Cool. Well, let me roll us into question number 5. And in the spirit of animated GIFs, I'll probably just share another one real quick here. So we got
you
our
said it
Zach
correctly. Good job. It's a GIF.
Yeah, right. Not a GIF. Yeah, it's a GIF. So so what's your favorite way to contact someone in the community?
Right there, the telephone. That is my favorite and most effective way that I've ever used, still to this day.
I love the telephone, and I tell people all the time, pick up the effing phone, because I think that we all think that just touching somebody digitally is enough, and it's not. But I am in love with human faces. I think that we build connections by staring somebody else in the face, connecting with their expressions, their emotions, their vibrations, and as much as possible, turn on your camera. Look somebody in the eye, but more importantly and even better, go meet with them. Take a walk with them. My best connections, my best meetings are walk-in meetings. And so what I do often is, if I don't have to be in front of a computer and I am on the phone, walk and talk. If I have a meeting with a team member, we'll walk and talk. If somebody wants to meet me for coffee, I say, meet me at my house and let's go walk to the beach, because I think through actual connections with human beings, whether it's visually on the camera or in person, that's my favorite way.
The brain works best at 3.5 miles an hour. That's what I've always thought.
Well, I say, I don't know when the last time I had a regular phone call with somebody was from a business perspective, and I'll use that because I want to look you in your digital eyeballs, right? So I probably average 8 hangouts a day, 8 hangouts or Skypes a day, because for me this is the connection. I want to read nonverbal cues. I want to be able to share, my world, and I think we're getting to a world that doesn't care that my daughter, who's 6 months or 8 months old, in the background is screaming or we're going to be interrupted. We now understand that there's people who work from home, they work from life. I don't mind when someone's sitting in, on the subway or something is doing a video hangout. But for me, if you don't have a Skype or a Hangout, or even now Facebook has Video Messenger, everyone has one of those. So it's often I get like a request for a meeting, and they'll have a phone number, and then from that phone number, I'll say, well, are we going to do a Hangout or a Skype? And it's almost always there. Now the phone ends up being more convenient if you're not in front of a video, but if you do, I use the camera on the front of my iPhone for Hangouts just as much as I use the camera that's on my laptop.
And that goes back to building a personal relationship, right? If you've built that personal relationship, then they understand, hey, you've got a kid. That's no big deal. That's part of your life. We've connected past that business-only point to where actually, we have a social interaction, a social relationship. For me, in the community that I'm in, I totally am with John. It's all about the face-to-face. I do a ridiculous amount of traveling. An insane amount. My wife's angelic for keeping up with our kids so that I can do the traveling. But when I show up at an event and I'm talking with people face-to-face, and they find out that I flew in across the Atlantic or whatever for a single one-day event to meet with them and to talk with them, it blows them away. They're like, wow, you care that much about my involvement in this community that you're going to do that? And then they're sold. They're in for life, and how can I be more involved in this community? So there's something to be said for that.
The last time I was at South by Southwest, and I was at this Path party, and I was sitting there talking to Gary Vee, and I just shared this idea I had, and he turned around and looked at me, and he went like this, showed me his arm, and he said this, chills. That's what you want to do. That's how you want to connect with people. You want to basically create an emotion in them that there's a connection, and they will remember you, and that the next time you do connect, it's like you never lost that touch.
All right, well, I think we have half a minute here or so to just quick blow into our final question, which is, how do you maintain personal boundaries with your community?
I don't. I do a horrible job at that. I put it all out there always for forever. So until I get burned on it, I'm probably going to continue to do it just that way.
I still read most every customer service email that comes in. I call customers back at night on the weekends. I was walking out of my doctor's office a while back, and I looked to my left, and I saw this old man walking out of the room next to me. And I look at him, I go, God, you look familiar. I didn't say that. And then I notice it's Mick Jagger. And it's like, he's like this tall, and he's like 80-something years old. And I look at him, I say, are you the guy I just saw 6 months ago on stage that was 100 feet tall and powering 100,000 people? And ultimately, I think that people like that, people like me who go out and build stuff, do it because we love the connection with the humanity that we're connecting with, the empowerment that we do, and the feedback that we get. And so ultimately, it's hard to maintain the balance when you love it so much.
I think you see that great community managers realize that there's not a lot of personal. You put it all out there. You're giving everything you have into that community, and you're really letting them into your life and seeing who you are. Just like that tweet that was earlier that was so on top. When you say, I make mistakes, I'm not perfect. We have to be willing to be ourselves and let people into who we are. And that's why sometimes people aren't going to like us, and that's why some people are not going to find us to be that perfect connection point, and you link them to somebody else, because really I struggle horribly with that personal boundary level, because I'm just going to put it out there, and this is who I am. I'm in it for this reason. I'm passionate about this community, and I want you to be in it too.
I think
I'm just gonna wrap us up here from time, but Jason Seiden has this word I love to bring up on a topic like this, which is propersonal. It's kind of like your professional self and your personal self all just sort of mashed together, and you don't worry about boundaries. So it's 2 o'clock Central, 3 o'clock Eastern, which means we're out of time, unfortunately. I think we could probably talk for another hour. This was great. Sherry, what's going on next week? What's our topic coming up next Friday?
Next week we're talking about onboarding and engaging new members, and we do still have room on panel.
new members, and we have room on the panel. Awesome. All right. Well, everybody, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next Friday, same time, same channel.
Have a great one.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
You guys.